Ian Herbert Jones and his sailing boat Puffin will set off on what is probably the toughest round-the-world race. Kitted out with lots of Victron equipment, Ian will face extreme sailing conditions during the brutal 30,000-mile non-stop solo navigation. Moored in Whitehaven Marina, in the northwest of England, Puffin is a Tradewind 35, built in 1986 and now having a complete refit for her electrics, ready for the 2022 Golden Globe race.
The Golden Globe is unique. To start with, it's a sailing race around the world. It's also solo, so that's single-handed. It's non-stop. And it's unassisted, which means no outside help from anybody. And we will be away at sea for anything up to 9 months.
The race starts in Les Sables d'Olonne in France on the 4th of September 2022. The race course starts south, heading past the Canary Islands, where the competitors will make a film drop and can be interviewed without interrupting racing, bearing south across the Atlantic Ocean before turning east towards Cape Town. Once again, competitors will make a film drop at this point without stopping or receiving any assistance. As they pass the Cape of Good Hope, heading east, the southern Indian Ocean and roaring 40s awaits them. They mustn't sail further south than 45 degrees latitude to avoid the risk of icebergs or face a time penalty from race control, who will be monitoring their progress. Each vessel has a satellite tracker on board, but the competitors can't access its data. As they leave the Indian Ocean behind, they will sail past Cape Lewin, the southern west tip of Australia, before heading further south to Tasmania's Storm Bay, where they must drop sails and drift or anchor for 90 minutes. This offers an opportunity for the media and family to interview the competitors. They depart and race on, heading south of New Zealand and on across the Pacific Southern Ocean, again staying north of an imaginary line at 46 degrees south, until they are east of 115 degrees longitude, passing close to Point Nemo, the most isolated position on the planet, where the crew of the International Space Station may be the closest people to the competitors at sea. Then it's further south again, down to 56 degrees and round the infamous Cape Horn and back up the Atlantic, across the equator and back to the finish line in Les Sables d'Olonne in France.
We are not allowed most of the modern technology that boaters have become used to. So these days when we go to sea, we've nearly always got a chart plotter with us. We've certainly got a GPS. In fact, we've probably got 5 or 6 GPSs on board in some form or another. We have VHF radios that have got emergency DSCs on board and all sorts of wizardry. And that's stripped back to the bare bones for this race. So the first thing is there's no GPS allowed at all. So that means there's no electronic charts and electronic mapping. So I'm on paper charts. What we are allowed is high frequency radio, which is sometimes called single sideband, but it's the long distance radio that sailors have used for the longest time. So certainly that was what was available back in the late 60s. We're allowed a very basic VHF radio, which is a challenge in itself, because today you can't buy a VHF that doesn't have GPS in it, just like you wouldn't buy a phone without GPS. Why would you do that? So we actually have to seek out either old equipment or equipment that can be have things like GPS turned off in some way. The safety blanket is as high tech as it can be, but the actual challenge in the race is pretty much as basic as it can be as well.
Puffin has proven herself already, finishing 4th in the 2018 Golden Globe race with USA entrant Istvan Kopar. However, it returned home in need of work to her electrics. Connections were corroded, equipment had failed, and the system was completely unusable. So it's time for a refit.
In the sailing business, you open a locker and there's a blue box in there by Victron doing something wonderful with LED flashing lights. So initially I reached out to Victron to see if they'd be interested in supporting the project, and they were great, fantastic. They stepped up really quickly. They just got it overnight. It very much is an off-grid, highly resilient type of need. And through Victron, I was introduced to Chris Dobson at UK Marine Electronics, and Chris also got it immediately and volunteered his services to help with the design. So we're doing a complete refit from scratch. So everything will be new on board. Victron are going to supply all of the electrical componentry that allows Chris to design me a really robust, resilient system.
We've opted for a modular system on this boat, so all the electrics are built into watertight boxes and then connected together. So we have what we've nicknamed Big Blue, which is the main power system, packed full, of course, of Victron equipment. But Victron equipment, whilst being extremely robust, isn't necessarily waterproof. In this case, on Ian's boat, there is a fair good chance that he'll be joined by a wave at some point. Should this hit the electrics, that's game over. In this boat, what will happen is it'll hit the boxes and nothing will get wet.
The system will comprise of 4 batteries, an engine start, 2 independent service batteries, and a critical systems battery. Charging will be from a combination of hydro generator and solar panels. Chris is using Victron MPPT controllers for the charging sources. The engine alternator charging will also be available, but this should be considered emergency use only, as race rules permit just 1 tank of fuel for the entire race. Each circuit on board can select either the primary or secondary battery as a power source. The retro nature of the 1960s rules and conditions of entry into the race means that lithium technology is strictly prohibited. Chris has selected lead carbon because of their ability to tolerate partial charge and even the occasional complete discharge. In the stern area there are 2 lockers. Each locker will house a 12 volt 160 amp hour battery for things like interior lighting aboard Puffin, navigation lights and the limited communication equipment permitted by race rules. These batteries are held within bespoke watertight containers inside the lockers and are purposely separated. Each battery has its own fuse, master switch and BMV battery monitor, and both independently feed through the stern bulkhead inside the boat. In the port side battery box will be housed an Argo diode battery combiner. This is to enable Ian to power the system from either battery independently. In the starboard battery box will also be a Sirix relay to provide battery charging.
Race rules state that you must have 300 ampere hours minimum. In addition to that, he's got 110 ampere hour in the starter battery and he's got 20 ampere hour in the critical systems battery.
Being unassisted really means that you can't have anyone calling you and giving you advice, particularly on weather or routing. The whole principle of this race is to really go back to the spirit of the original race in 1968, the original Sunday Times Golden Globe race, which left in 68, came back in 69 and was famously won by Robin Knox-Johnson. So we will essentially be using the same technology, the same type of boats, with the same kind of support that they had back then. I've never sailed solo around the world, but I was lucky enough to take part in something called the Clipper Race, which is a round the world sailing race with stops. So I've been offshore for long periods of time, I've seen the big oceans, but that race stopped at ports as we went around the world.
Chris has made the system as simple as possible, but with a number of redundancy options. He's planning out the equipment on 2 watertight containers that will fit the available space within Puffin's cupboard. With a series of battery combiners and solar charge controllers, Ian will be able to charge his batteries using a hydro generator that will be towed behind the vessel, fixed solar panels on the deck, and via an additional portable fold-away solar panel so that he can angle it towards the sun if the sail is blocking the fixed panels, for example.
When we've designed this system, everything has gone into waterproof boxes with glands. We've even gone as far as putting clear plastic lids on as many of the enclosures as we can, so there's no need to open them. He can simply look at the little flashing lights, and he'll be able to tell from that whether he's got a problem or not. It's all very low tech, so it's flashing lights he needs to see. He's not going to be allowed screens. He's not going to be allowed a phone or anything else to connect to Bluetooth. It's just purely and simply looking at the lights and the battery monitor.
Again, Ian needs to be able to switch from one battery to another should there be an issue, and Battery Protects will stop them from being over-discharged. Along with the primary and secondary power, there is a critical systems power requirement for location equipment so that he can get help should there be an emergency.
Danger of the weather is clearly what everybody imagines, and we are going to spend anything up to 3 months in the Southern Ocean, which is, probably the most inhospitable place on the planet, and it just can't be underestimated. That is a dangerous environment for the boat. It's a big ocean, but amazingly you do seem to end up in the same spot as big super tankers at times. So it is a solo race, so if you can imagine, you can't be on watch all the time. It's just not possible. So collision with other vessels is a distinct danger that needs to be managed. It's a huge logistic challenge, the whole preparation for the race, but the race itself, effectively I'm off grid for up to 9 months. So anything that you could possibly think you might need for 9 months alone, I need to take with me on this boat. And then I've got to think about looking after the boat, because boats need constant maintenance. So I'm talking about 9 months worth of food, 9 months worth of toothpaste, and 9 months worth of spares for the boat. Things like water. People ask, well, how do you manage with water? Well, the answer is you don't. I have to catch rainwater to survive once I've gone through the 200 litres that are on board the boat. So domestically, it's a massive challenge. Forget sailing. Just getting by is quite an event in itself.
During the lead-up to the race, Ian has to complete a number of ocean passages. During that time, we need to be able to monitor how much power he's using, where it's coming from, and what he's using it on. That way, we can fine-tweak after each passage. We can fine-tweak his system so that everything will work perfectly.
During those preparation cruises, Puffin will include a remote monitoring box containing a Venus GX and a GX LTE that'll provide a mobile internet connection. They can then fine-tune anything using real-world data from the vessel.
I absolutely am looking forward to it. I know it's going to be a huge event in my life, so it's with some trepidation at times. The project itself is enormous to get to the start line, and it can be all-consuming when you've got a family and a day job and everything else. And I actually think the biggest relief will be when I cross that start line. I'm really looking forward to that moment of leaving Sable d'Olonne in France, waving goodbye to the crowds and knowing that's it. All that preparation is now, it's just me, and I am very much looking forward to that.
We will of course keep you up to date on Ian's progress in the race, and there are links in the description to the Golden Globe Race website, UK Marine Electronics, and details of the equipment used within the install and their wiring diagrams. The Golden Globe Race next year will be extremely challenging for Ian, but will give him an adventure of a lifetime that draws sailors back to the golden age of one sailor, one boat, as he, along with his Victron Electronics, look to conquer the great oceans of the world.